Today we're talking about project management. Now, before we get started, it's important that I say project management is a huge subject. It goes into lots of different directions and lots of different degrees of sophistication and complexity. So it's important that I set out my stall early on. We are looking at this on a small scale. This is a quick video and we're going to give you a basic introduction to the principles, but it's really aimed at if you're involved in sort of maybe a community group or a small project at work, or maybe you're involved in a hobby or a pastime, you're in a club and you're involved in a campaign or a small project and you're trying to organise that. That's the level we're aiming this at. What is project management? Well, essentially, project management is the planning, organising, motivating and controlling of resources to achieve a specific goal or target or aim. Now, when we talk about resources, what we mean by that are things like materials, tools, equipment, money is a resource, and also people. The people you've got involved in the project have to be organised and managed at the same time. So it's the skills involved in handling all those things, but to also keep your eye on the goal, what it is you're trying to do with them, and do it within a certain time frame. Why is it important? Well, because it ties into so many different aspects of our lives. Whether you're building a house or you're just trying to get your holiday organised, they're all involve similar skills as project management. It's good in your personal life, it's good in your professional life, it's good if you're involved in the community projects or voluntary organisations. And it also is an excellent set of skills to have if you're applying for a job. Employers love to see that you have the ability and the skills to actually manage projects successfully. So we're going to go through some of the basic principles so you've got a foundation, but obviously there's a lot more to this than we can cover in the space of such a short video. What is a project? Well, a project has three things. It has an established aim or target, the thing it's actually trying to achieve, okay, the reason why you're doing this. Secondly, it has a set amount of resources, whether it's people or tools or materials or money, the things we mentioned earlier. So you've got only so much stuff you can play with. And then it has a start date and it has an end date. Projects don't usually go on forever. They have a set amount of time that they're trying to achieve that goal within. Sometimes they can be extended or the scope of the project can be made bigger, but in general terms we're talking about a set amount of time, a set amount of stuff you can play with, but a very clear idea of what you're trying to achieve with them. How is it done? Well, that varies wildly depending on the scale and the type of project you are looking at. But for the kind of things we've discussed, there are four basic principles. They are project definition, project planning, keeping on track, and project closure. Project definition sounds complicated, but all it really means is you sit down and you really clarify what is it you're trying to achieve. Okay, that might sound very simple, but you'd be amazed how many projects don't really get this part right. It's important that you understand what your project is about, and it's important that you can put that into simple words that make sense to everybody. If you don't, then people might have the wrong idea what you're trying to do, or it might be hard to get people involved or so they understand what it is you're trying to do. I like to talk in terms of a t-shirt slogan. Think sort of 25 words or less. If you could do something that you could write on a t-shirt, so when somebody comes up to you and says, what is this project for? You can point to that, or you can just say a sentence and they get it, then you've got a good project definition. Project planning. Now, the easiest way I've seen of doing this for smaller scale projects is to simply take your aim, your project definition, what it is you're trying to achieve, and chop that up into tasks. What is it that we need to do to achieve our project? Now, once you've done that, and you can do that to the smaller degree as you want to, it's probably the smaller the better, get some cards or some bits of paper or some post-it notes and write on each card one of those tasks. Then add to each one what materials you need, what tools, what equipment, what resources, how many people need to be involved, is there specific people need to be involved, how long it's going to take, that task, and how much, what's the cost of doing that task. So each little card or piece of paper should have all that information about that task on it. Then lay them out on a big table in front of you and organise them. And you want to organise them into a timeline. And all that means is you're going to start here, the beginning, and you're going to work your way across to the end. And you're going to organise all your cards or your little piece of paper so you get a timeline. That's what we call a Gantt chart. Okay, you don't need to remember that, but just for those of you who like the professional terminology, you're creating a Gantt chart. And all a Gantt chart is a chart of what jobs need to be done in the order they need to be done in. If you think of it like something ridiculously simple, like making a cup of tea, the tasks would include getting the cups out of the cupboard, filling the kettle with water, boiling the kettle, getting the tea bags out of the cupboard. You get the idea, they're the tasks. If I organise those, then I put them in the right order. You don't want to be pouring the water into the cups if you haven't yet boiled the kettle. They've got to be in order. Once you've organised all your little bits of paper, then you could, if you want, draw it up into a proper chart or put it on a computer or whatever you want to do, so you've got something you can share with other people. But planning is something you should take time on. Time spent planning is rarely wasted. Keeping on track. Now then, you've got your project definition done and you've got your project plan done and it all looks beautiful, and maybe you've got a big chart on the wall and it's all colour coded, etc. It looks great. Now then, here's the first thing that's going to happen is something will go wrong. There's a great expression, if you really want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Life doesn't follow a plan, okay? Things change. Obstacles occur that you couldn't really foresee. It just is, that's life, isn't it? You can have the best laid plans in the world and then something goes wrong. That's part of project management. You can't just say, well, it's gone wrong, so our plan's out the window, the project's failed. What a good project manager will do is they will keep their eye on the goal, what is it we're trying to achieve, and they'll adjust that plan. Another expression I like is set your goals in concrete, so they're fixed, but write your plans in the sand, because you're going to have to change them. So step 3 is keeping it on track, because you are going to have to change and adapt your plan as you go along. But it's much easier to do that with a good plan than it is to do it with no plan at all. Project closure. So how do you end a project? How do you bring it to a close? Do you know, this will vary again depending on what type of project you're doing. But for instance, you've had a lot of people involved, let's say it's a community project. And maybe they've given their heart and souls to these things. And maybe they've worked for a long period of time on it. And even if it's successful, bringing that thing to an end needs a bit of managing. It needs a bit of careful handling, because people feel a sense of loss that this part of their life is going to come to an end. It's almost like bereavement for some people. They're losing something that they loved. Or it might be more formal in that, say for instance, you've got funding for your project. The funding requirements may say, well, we want things like reports at the end of it. We want evaluations. We want to know what the stats are. What exactly is it that you did achieve? We want figures, facts. And again, that's something that should be looked at in the planning stage before you do anything. But it'll have an important point right at the end, because you might have to justify everything that you did in that project. So you're going to need to organise that. But there's the people and there's the admin, if you like. But you're going to have an idea of how you're going to bring this thing to a close. Also, part of that might be, is there a what next? Does your project have something that you want it to lead into? So again, give some thought to that. So the 4 stages, the 4 basic principles of project management are project definition, project planning, keeping it on track, and project closure. SMART targets. You may come across the expression SMART targets. They're very popular in project management terms and other things, and you might be wondering what they are. SMART targets is a simply an abbreviation for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And the point of them is, if you are going to set a target, if you're going to say we're going to do this, if your target is not SMART, then it is potentially vague, wishy-washy, not really concrete. And because of that, you're much less likely to achieve it. If you want your targets to be meaningful, then they should be SMART. What that means is they should be specific, i.e. you should really nail down the detail of what it is you're trying to do. They should be measurable. There should be a way that you can look at it and say, did we achieve that target or not? Now then, some things are easier to measure than others. So if I'm trying to lose weight, it's fairly straightforward for me to measure that. I simply step on the scales. But if I'm trying to do a project where I'm trying to make people happier, how do you measure happiness? Apparently there is a way of doing it, but it's complicated, isn't it? Because happy means different things to different people, and you might feel happy one minute and then the next minute you might not. It changes. It's a much harder thing to sort of nail down. But whatever it is you're trying to do, it should be specific, and it should be a way, there should be some way of measuring it. Did we do it? Did we not do it? And degrees, if you like. Achievable often gets mixed up with the next one, which is realistic. Achievable means can it be done? Realistic means can it be done by you or by the people involved in the timescale with everything else that's going on? So that sounds complicated, so let me explain it this way. Can I run a marathon? Now, I'm not a runner. Okay, I do not run, but could I? I'm reasonably fit and healthy. Could I run a marathon? And the answer is yes. I might not break any records, but with a good training program, I could probably run a marathon. I could probably get round it. Could I do it tomorrow? No way. There's no way I could do it tomorrow. Okay, so is it achievable for me to run a marathon? Yes. Is it realistic? Not at the moment. I would need some time to get ready for it. Okay, so, and equally you might say I can do something. It is achievable, but I can't do it right now. Or I can't do it with everything else that's going on in my life. Or I've got these other projects I'm involved in. I would love to help you, but I can't. I could help you, but I can't right now. So achievable is can it be done? And realistic is can it be done now by the people involved, by you, with everything else that's going on. And the last part of SMART targets is T for time bound. And time bound just means put a time and a date on when you're going to achieve that by. Because if you don't, it's one of those one day things. One day I'll do this. One day I'm going to do that. I would love to travel a bit more. I would love to go to somewhere like, one of my dream places to go to is Japan. And if I say, which I do at the moment, one day I'll go to Japan, it's just not quite as concrete as if I say this time next year I'm going to go to Japan. You see what I mean? By setting a time to it, it makes it more real. It makes it more, wow, I've got to get organised. I've got to get on with it because there is a definite time to that. So SMART targets are important. When you're setting targets, try and make them SMART. And remember, it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Managing risk. Now, we mentioned in the principles of project management about keeping things on track, how you do your plan, and then things will go wrong and you've got to kind of work around that. But that doesn't mean you have to wait until things go wrong before you try and plan how you're going to deal with it. Often it's a good idea to sit down before you start your project and actually say, what could go wrong? And if it could go wrong, how bad would it be? And what can we do to try and deal with that? If you're doing that, it's essentially risk management. You're looking at what could go wrong and how are we going to deal with it. That's risk management. And there are 5 stages to risk management. So let's take a look at them. Step 1, identify risks. Now all this means is you just sit down before, and you've got to do this before you start your project, okay? And you just basically brainstorm and have a think, what could go wrong? Now, if I'm organising a community event, like a summer fun day, and we're all going to be in the park, then the obvious thing is it could rain, weather, okay? But you've equally got to think about if there's going to be electricity involved, and this is where you get into your health and safety type activities. All you're simply going to do is sit down and work out as much as you can, you don't have to do it on your own, what could go wrong. Step 2, write them down. So it's important once you've worked out what could go wrong that you write it down. Now then, you're starting to get into the area of what we call risk assessments. Risk assessments are often a requirement for certain organisations or funding, etc., that you have to have formal risk assessments. It's part of health and safety procedures. But without getting too technical, once you've worked out what could go wrong, write it down, because you're starting to implement a system then. You're starting to implement a system by identifying risks and monitoring, and we'll come back to those documents in one of the later stages. Step 3, risk impact analysis. Wow, that sounds complicated, doesn't it? Risk impact analysis. Well, it sounds that, but it's not. All you're basically doing is working out, once you've worked out what could go wrong, it's how bad would that be if it happened. Okay, is it going to be a minor inconvenience or is it going to be a disaster? How bad would it be if that thing happened? That's your risk impact analysis. But you want to write that down on your document. It's another reason why in step 2 we said write it down. You want to add that to it and say, okay, this is what could happen and this is how bad it could be. Step 4, risk management plan. So we're developing that document a bit more now. So we've worked out what could go wrong and we've worked out if it did happen, how bad would it be. Now then, the next step is, if there are things there that if they happened could be bad, okay, they're what we call high risk situations with hazards, etc., then what we're trying to do then is we're trying to look at ways we can either prevent them, stop them happening, or we can reduce the effect of them. Okay, so if my fun day's in the park and it could rain and that could wash everything out, then one of the ways I could reduce the risk of that is I could somehow find some marquees or tents, or maybe move aspects of it indoors if that's an option, or maybe change the day to, I don't know, a day when it doesn't rain in the northwest of England, if you can do that. But you're looking for ways, how do I either prevent it happening or do I reduce the effect of it? Okay, and that's our risk management plan. Step 5, monitor and update. So once we've developed our plan, again, our risk management plan, we've worked out what could go wrong, we've looked at how bad that might be if it did happen, and we've come up with various solutions and ways of either preventing those things happening or reducing the impact of them if they did happen. We don't just sit back and go, job done. We monitor, and all that means is we watch, we keep an eye out, we're looking, because things change, okay? Risk management is an ongoing fluid process. It's never just done. You're always keeping an eye out because situations change, things don't necessarily go to plan, unexpected things will happen. However good your planning is, unexpected things always crop up. So as you're watching that, then you go back to your step 2 where you're writing down your risks, and you're going back to your step where you're looking at your risk impact analysis, and you're constantly updating that and you're constantly refreshing. And the things that you're going to do to try and reduce risk, they might need to be changed as you update those plans. So it's a constant process throughout your project management. So there you have it, project management, and obviously we have raced through this at a pace. This is a massive subject which there's a lot more we could cover, but not in the scope of this small video. So I hope it's been useful, a useful starting point, if you like, for you. But it's a great skill to develop. It's great for the work you're involved in, for the projects, especially if you're involved in voluntary or community work. It's great for you as an individual, and employers love it when they see that you've got those kind of skills if you are applying for a job. Probably the last thing that I want to leave you with is this. Even though we've covered things like project definition and project planning and Gantt charts and all that stuff, and keeping it on track, and project closure and risk management and identifying what could go wrong and reducing the chances of that, reducing the impact of that. All these technical things and all of that, the key message I want to leave you is this: good project management is about working with people. Okay? Budgets and schedules and coloured charts and all that kind of stuff are good and great, and I encourage that, but don't let them take the place of the skills involved in working with other people, because most of the projects you're going to be involved in, if they're of any scale of importance, are going to involve other people. We've recently done another video on working with other people. I'll put the link to that here. I can't remember where it goes on the frame, but it will be there somewhere now. Check that out. We've also done videos on problem solving and communication skills. Check those out. Good project management is about that communication skills. It's about solving problems. It's about working with people, organising them, leading them, motivating people. Okay, so the other stuff's very important, but the key is people. That's really what project management is essentially about. So again, I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found that useful. Until we meet again, stay safe, take care, and goodbye.